Today I'm talking about Rivian, who released the electric truck, the R1T, back in September 2021. Soon after, it unveiled its R1S electric SUV. Despite being the first to the truck race, production ramp has been difficult because of supply chain issues and increased costs for parts and labor due to inflation. In fact, because of these reasons, Rivian raised the prices of its vehicles this past March. Sadly, this caused some consumers to cancel their orders. Today, we're looking at where Rivian is right now, why they're under a lot of pressure to boost output, and where they're going. Rivian doesn't have the 100+ years of history and heritage like Ford, but all companies have to start somewhere, and Rivian's story belongs to the 21st century. This American startup was founded back in 2009, 13 years ago. Yet many Americans still aren't too familiar with the brand. Here's the thing. When Rivian was founded, the first vehicle was intended to be a sporty coupe similar to a larger version of the Hyundai Veloster, and it was expected to be released in 2013. But for the first dozen years, Rivian didn't release a single passenger car. But today there's some 7,000 R1Ts on the road. If you live in 9 select U.S. cities, you can even see 1,000 Rivian electric delivery vans, or EDVs, on the road. EDVs, these were built exclusively for Rivian's investor Amazon. Initially, Rivian's goal was to make 50,000 vehicles this year, but since then, they've reduced the goal down to 25,000 vehicles. Shortly after Rivian released the R1T back in September 2021, the company went public through an initial public offering, or IPO. On its first day of trading, the market value of the company was under $100 billion. If you're wondering what that even means, well, its market value was worth more than Ford and GM at that time. Amazon purchased $200 million of stock, giving it 22% ownership of Rivian. Clearly, many found the company to be very promising. But today's outlook is drastically different. When the company went IPO, the stock closed at $100 a share. Today, it's around $28 a share. So we're talking a drop of 82%. That's not a gradual decline, but a steep drop. Let's talk about the Rivian R1T electric truck. It's a 2-row 5-seater with a starting price of $73,000. And depending on the battery and motor you select, your R1T will give you anywhere from 260 all the way to 400+ miles of range. The R1T can drive over 3 feet of water, rock crawl at 100% grade, traverse almost any terrain with 14.9 inches of ground clearance, and tow up to 11,000 pounds. On top of that, it can accelerate from 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds. The R1T also comes with 3 specific tire options made specifically for the vehicle. We're talking 20-inch all-terrain tires, 21-inch road tires, or 22-inch sport tires. But the R1T hasn't come without its fair share of bumps and bruises along the way. Take, for example, the R1T's recent tonneau issues. Apparently, there were issues with the powered truck bed cover not operating the way it should. Now, it's not a recall since it's not a safety or regulatory compliance issue, and Rivian is working to have a solution in early 2023. And for now, Rivian has completely removed the tonneau and will replace it with an upgraded version at an unspecified future time. So if you're holding a reservation for an R1T right now, you'll need to choose between getting the manual cover or opt for no cover at all for now. If you opt for no tonneau, you'll get a $1,500 reduction on the price, whereas the manual one reduces your price by $700. The manual tonneau has 4 interlocking panels. It protects cargoes from light weather and will be fully lockable. Did you know that Rivian emailed customers not too long ago to inform them it will be pulling the plug on the less expensive Explorer trims for their R1T pickup and R1S SUV? Rivian decided to cut the trim to focus on delivering as many vehicles as possible. But even before that, Rivian scrapped the 5-seater version of the R1S, opting for the 7-seat version instead. Speaking of the R1S, Rivian's upcoming R1S is a 3-row, 7-passenger SUV. Rivian is marketing it as the world's first electric adventure vehicle. You can see its intent by the car specs. Battery systems in R1S can endure temperatures of 130 degrees Fahrenheit all the way down to minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit. And depending on the battery pack and motor you select, your R1S could have anywhere between 260 to 320+ miles of range. Starting price of the R1S is $78,000. This past July, Rivian EDVs, especially designed for Amazon, hit the road in 9 select cities, including Seattle, San Diego, Dallas, and Chicago. Right now, there's about 1,000 of these on the road, and that's out of Amazon's order of 100,000 EDVs that they made. Did you know that Ford has an interest in Rivian too? Back in 2019, Ford led a $500 million investment round in Rivian. And since then, it's invested in private funding rounds of Rivian. Originally, the two had a strategic partnership to co-develop an electric Lincoln SUV. But when the pandemic set in, they canceled the collaboration and split up. The two brands mutually decided it would be best to focus on their own separate projects. Ford chose to focus on increasing global production to 600,000 EVs annually by 2023. If you were to guess whose Rivian's biggest competitor is, you'd probably guess Tesla, and you'd be right. Actually, the two companies share some similarities, but they also have some interesting differences too. For example, Tesla has split their focus across multiple types of EVs, but Rivian is focusing on adventure vehicles. From the get-go, Tesla focused on consumer retail sales. Rivian, on the other hand, focused on building vehicles for both the consumer and for the commercial market at the same time. And then, of course, we got the difference in company profit. It would be unfair to compare the two companies' revenues today, since Tesla's been around 6 years longer than Rivian. But just compare when Tesla went public in June 2010. At that time, Tesla had already delivered 1,063 vehicles, and they made $147,570 in revenue. They also had a gross profit margin of 19%. On the other hand, when Rivian IPO'd in September 2021, they hadn't delivered any cars. By April 2022, Rivian did deliver 2,147 vehicles, but they reported a cumulative revenue of $150,000, and they had a gross profit margin of minus 528%. That's a huge difference. Part of this reason is because at the time of the IPO, Tesla was transitioning from assembling low-volume, high-priced cars to integrating themselves as a manufacturer of high-volume, low-cost vehicles that were made with new manufacturing approaches. And yes, it's true that the Tesla Roadster was popular, but it wasn't Tesla who manufactured it. Actually, it was British car maker Lotus. Tesla only took care of the final assembly. Tesla was also in the process of buying its Fremont factory. Compare that to how Rivian's operating. All of its trucks come out of its own plant in Normal, Illinois, and they're only making a small number of trucks to begin with. According to Rivian, their Normal plant can produce 150,000 vehicles, but it's only producing several thousands per quarter. So until Rivian can produce enough EVs, it won't be able to see much return on its investment. Speaking of the two, did you know that Tesla is actually in the middle of suing Rivian? Back in July 2020, Tesla filed a lawsuit against Rivian, claiming that Rivian had stolen highly confidential trade secrets through newly hired employees who were former Tesla employees. But that's not the only reason Tesla is suing Rivian. Last year, Tesla added new accusations to the legal case. In this filing, Tesla claimed that since July 2020, Rivian had continued to poach Tesla staff. And Tesla also claimed that Rivian had stolen highly proprietary battery technology since the lawsuit was filed, due to pressure from investors after nearly a dozen years without producing a single commercial vehicle. Rivian says that Tesla's new allegations are unsupported. Rivian claims that in many cases, Tesla didn't specify exactly what trade secrets Rivian was supposed to have stolen. So where is Rivian headed? To answer that question, we can look at 4 recent months in Rivian's history. In March 2022, Rivian revealed it would raise the base price of its R1T by $12,000 and the R1S SUV by $14,500. As you can imagine, the company faced massive backlash on social media, especially when Rivian explained these increases would even apply to customers who had already pre-ordered. Later, Rivian CEO R.J. Scaringe announced that Rivian would honor the original price for customers who had pre-ordered. He also explained that customers who canceled their pre-orders after the price could reinstate their order at the original price they paid. Scaringe even apologized for the unexpected price hike and committed to rebuilding Rivian customers' trust. If you're wondering why Rivian drove up price, well, Rivian attributed to inflationary pressure, increasing component costs, unprecedented supply chain shortages, and delays for parts, including semiconductor chips. It also explained that the original base price had been set way back in 2018, whereas the world scene right now is drastically different than it was then. This past July 2022, Rivian started laying off around 6% of their workforce. Interest rates and commodity prices are sky high and only continues to rise. The email went on to say that for Rivian to fully realize their potential, its strategy needed to support its sustainable growth so it could ramp towards profitability. And so to do so, it needed to simplify and focus on other more pressing priorities. These priorities included things like enhancing their R1 pickup, accelerating the development launch of R2 and future platforms, and optimizing costs and operating expenses across the country. In September 2022, there were news about Rivian and Mercedes-Benz working to establish a new joint venture manufacturing company. This company will apparently invest and operate a factory in Europe to produce large electric vans for Mercedes-Benz vans and Rivian. This all-electric only production facility will leverage an existing Mercedes-Benz site in Central Europe. Together, Rivian and Mercedes-Benz plan to produce 2 large vans. The first van will be based on Van.EA. That stems from Mercedes-Benz van's electric-only platform. The second van will be based on the second-generation Rivian light van platform. The goal is to quickly scale up the production of electric vans for commercial customers. The Rivian-Mercedes-Benz collaboration appears to have more synergy than the partnership Rivian had with Ford. Both are sharing investments in technology. They're also sharing the same strategic ambition, which is to accelerate the electrification of the van market with superior and sustainable products that benefit customers and the planet too. This past October 2022, Rivian announced it would recall 13,000 vehicles. The problem is the fastener that connects the front upper control arm and steering knuckle might not have been sufficiently torqued in some vehicles. Apparently, there were 7 reports potentially related to the structural issue of the torque fastener, and these reports caught the automaker's attention. Now, no injuries have been reported as of the recording of the video, but the company did find the nut could fully loosen. Actually, it's rare, but it can happen. And since it's a safety issue, a recall was issued. This wasn't the first mass Rivian recall, though. Back in May, Rivian recalled about 500 of the R1T electric pickup trucks here in the States due to the possibility of airbags not deactivating when the child was in the front passenger seat. Another recall could very possibly derail its EV production goals even into 2023. But now, you tell me, would you rather own an electric truck from Ford, Rivian, or Tesla? What are your thoughts on where Rivian is headed in the future? Please share by commenting below. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for your support.